Nilesh Oak, welcome to Grimerica. Thank you for joining us. How are you tonight or this morning?
Good evening, Graham. Good evening, Darren. Nilesh Oak. My namaskar to everyone from India. I am in a place named as Nashik. Literally means really something related to the nose. Okay, and that's how the word is closed, by the way. Nasika in Sanskrit. And this is where one of the key event of Ramayan happened. In fact, Ram and Sita, his wife, and his younger brother stayed here for 2 years.
Wow. Well, I mean, this is going to be a fascinating chat because we talk quite a bit. Like we've had Randall on a bunch of times, Randall Carlson. I know you know of his work and Graham Hancock as well. And we do trips with Randall, looking at the
Hmm.
evidence from the younger Dryas. We host trips with him. We're going to be going to the Azores, and I feel like you're really in the same vein, but from the Indian historical aspect. So we're really looking forward to chatting it to try and get a different perspective on this whole thing and see where there's some corroboration. So, I mean, maybe it's worth just mentioning a little bit about yourself, like a couple minutes on how you became interested to go down this non-academic route of writing about ancient Indian history.
Okay. Well, my background is very much non-history related background, chemical engineer. Did my bachelor's in India, master's in Canada, and then worked in corporate world for 25, 30 years. So this was very much my personal hobby, a passion, if you want to call it.
Yep.
It started very early. I'll give you an Indian context to this. What happens is India has a huge library of ancient literature, huge. I mean, there are many texts which have not even been read in modern times in the last 500 years. They are just collecting dust in some of the libraries. So that's not, there is no dearth of it. But what happens is there are these claims that I used to hear growing up. Like anytime we find something in modern science, modern technology, and say cell phone, aeroplane, which some of these things, I mean, most of these things are in what, last 150 years. Okay. And immediately somebody, when I was growing up here, will say, oh, that's there in one of our text, XYZ, And I said, well, then how come we don't have our own cell phones, going back to 20 years, 30 years, and aeroplanes and whatnot. So it was from that skeptical point of view. That's when my research began. So I wanted to know for myself, whatever they are claiming, is it there in the text that they are referring to? And that's where my journey began. Fast forward to say 1994, I was always reading stuff for my own personal consumption. But when I was just finishing my master's at University of Alberta, Edmonton, and I had like about 15 days or so, and I said, well, what do? I have nothing to do. So I went to the library, the Rutherford Library, like the humanities library. And all the by American I mean Canadian and American United States libraries, all decent universities will have this whole collection of Indian epics, Ramayan, but also the Mahabharat. So there is this whole 19 volume big collection of Mahabharat. Just out of curiosity, I pulled one volume related to the war itself.
Yeah.
And guess what? I did not reach where I wanted to actually search. But just before that, I ran into a amazing array of astronomy descriptions, and the author of the book and a contemporary to the Mahabharat times, he's telling the blind king, please try to stop the war if you can. And in that context, just like we will give all kinds of rationale why we should not go to war in Iraq or wherever, he's just making a laundry list of things. And in the consistent with that tradition, I suppose, and we'll talk about the purpose of this, he refers to, right in those 2 or 3 chapters, close to 30 to 40 different astronomy observations, astronomy configurations, combinations. And this is of that time. He's saying, this is what I see in the sky right now. And then don't go for a war. And so that intrigued me. And specifically one observation that we will discuss if we have a time, but that is something I would consider a crucial evidence, a decisive evidence. And I, in my naivety, Graham, I should say, I thought I'm going to figure this out in a couple of weeks that I had.
Yeah.
In reality, it took me 15 years, say from
Right.
1994 to 2009. But when I finally did decipher that astronomy configuration, what is happening is a history, another history in history making. And that's why we are talking today.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of it is centered around the Ramayan. I'm so used to pronouncing it with the A at the end, it's hard to stop that. And the Mahabharat. So
Yeah.
what's the main difference that you've learned about those two epics compared to what the mainstream, like what we've all sort of learned from school?
Okay, what we will learn in the
Oh,
school,
I
and
think
you tell,
you're muted, or
yeah,
my can you hear him?
I'm fine. Darren, you can hear me?
Mixer.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so can you hear me now, Graham?
You can go ahead.
Okay, I can go ahead. Okay. So what I would love to know, Graham, you or Darren, what you think. But my point is, I know that most of the world, at least outside India, believes that these are just epics, as in like a poetry, as in like a stories, a collection of stories, more like a novel. And they don't think it has any historical basis. Or if somebody thinks it has a historical basis, they think it's only coincidental, which is like we might call a historical fiction, meaning there might be a kernel of truth to it, and then the things are built based on whatever the original foundation was. But there was a lot of embellishments and all kinds of stories were built. This is what is a mainstream view. And the reason, Darren or Graham, the reason for this view is basically, it's not a very old view. It's actually a very recent view. When I say recent, I mean less than 300 years. And the story goes with Sir William Jones, who was sent by East India Company in 1765 to Kolkata, the eastern part of India. That's where the East India Company had their capital, you can say. And he was there, as he was sent there as a judge to deliver the justice. Now, because he has to deliver a justice to the local Indians, he started studying the Hindu text related to the judicial system, and that's how he got introduced to Sanskrit. And so, after him, I mean, he was extremely fascinated. But then, when the colonial interest took over, especially 1857 and afterwards, then the Aryan invasion theory came into the picture, and so there it just the whole attempt by all the Indologists in the UK, in America later on, also in other parts of Western Europe. Initially, there is a romantic period where the Mother India and Voltaire saying everything came from the bank of Ganga, Ganges, and so on. But that changed with the colonial interest. And so then for the last 1857, so what is that? Close to 200 years or something like that, what the world is bombarded with, but also the Indians here. So Indians have internalized it more than the rest of the world, that this is nothing but a fiction, at best a historical fiction. So that's the contemporary view.
And there seems to be a really big push or a change in the narrative in ancient mysteries and the evidence of an advanced civilization going way back. And it seems like you've sort of found the same evidence from your research that would match sort of that. The people going around looking at all these ancient sites, the megaliths and the Cyclopean architecture, and saying that like this stuff seems to be before the younger Dryas, let's say. So would you, because it seems like you've kind of, I missed some of what your answer was because my mixer crashed and I had to reboot it. But it seems like what you've done is sort of redate those two epics.
Yes. Yes. So let's go back to the story that I started at University of Alberta. So that particular reference that our listeners can relate to. This is the panhandle in the sky, the Ursa Major. Okay, the 7 stars of the panhandle. So there are 4 stars that create the pan, and then there are 3 stars into the handle. The middle star is in the Indian astronomy called Vasishta or sage Vasishta. In modern astronomy, it is Mizar, star Mizar.
Is
And
that the
next to
Big
that,
Dipper?
there is, yeah, the
The
Big
Big
Dipper.
Yeah.
Big Dipper, yeah. And next to that middle star in the handle, there is a small star. It's modern astronomy, we call it Alcor. In Indian astronomy, it's the Lady Arundhati, the wife of the sage Vasishta. That's why they are like imagined to be close to each other. Now, the big deal about this is the author of Mahabharat is telling the king, because remember, author is a contemporary. It's one of the character in the whole historical event of Mahabharat. The king, the blind king, to whom he is telling the story, telling these all signs, is actually his father. Okay, it's like it's an adopted father, meaning he provided the semen, for this guy to be born. And so back to this Big Dipper, the 7 stars. Right now, if you look at night, what you will see is looking at the North Pole star. They are going to come. This Big Dipper will come in the northeast, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
The latitude, and it's going to go anti-clockwise around the pole star. You will see the Mizar, the Vasishta, walking ahead of Alcor, Arundhati. Now, what the author of Mahabharat, his name is Vyasa. Vyasa means the one who expanded. Vyasa is saying that at the time of the Mahabharat war or Mahabharat event, the younger star, the smaller star, Arundhati, Alcor, is walking ahead of Vasishta, and that's the mystery. That was the mystery in our times. Just to give you a background, like there are some great astronomers that India saw in the last 150 years, for example, and they had literally tried their best to make sense of this. And some of them, I mean, archaeoastronomy as a discipline, not many people would know, began in India. This was S.B. Dikshit. We are going back to 1860s and 1870s, and then Lokmanya Tilak in 1890s, and so on. So they thought this is impossible in the very order of nature, astronomy speak. The same thing people are saying in 1960s, so 100 years after. And the same thing people were saying in 2009, when I finally figured this out. So I'll jump to the conclusion to keep it away the technicalities of astronomy. Finally, when I figured this out, this is what the conclusion is: that there was actually a historical time, astronomy speak, that can be verified by anyone with the basics of astronomy. Say sometime from 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC. From 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC, about 5,000 year time period, when anyone in the northern hemisphere or anyone who could see the Big Dipper, if they would have seen these 2 stars during that time, they would have seen the Alcor would walk ahead of Mizar, the Arundhati walk ahead of Vasishta, unlike it is today. And this is the only time period, if you go back in history, when this configuration is true. So if you have to draw the inference, so this is my evidence. I objectively tested it. The inference I'm going to draw based on modern astronomy and Indian astronomy is, if this statement of the Mahabharata is true, then the Mahabharat event happened sometime between 10,000 and 5,000 BC.
Okay.
So would that
And
be for a full? Would that when you talk about it?
Procession?
Yeah, would that so it would get back to the same spot a full procession later, where the stars would be all in the same spot again? Is
Okay,
that
now that's a
is
great
that
question.
cyclical?
Yeah, that's a great point, Darren. So, 2 points to that. First thing, the very reason this combination change into that configuration between 10,000 to 5,000 BC is because of precession, because of the precession of the Earth's axis. However, there is a very interesting thing about it. There is something else known as a proper motions of the stars, which is to say, against the fabric of the sky, they have their own relative motion with respect to each other, but also say against the Earth's axis, where it's pointing to. So it's a proper motion, like, that's how they would move. And if we do it another episode sometime, I'll take you through another star. Actually, the Indians are observing that star for 60,000 years, but let's not digress to that. That's the proper motion, what I mean. Like, there is another star that came from all the way from the North Pole all the way to the ecliptic, where the sun's path is. But back to this, Darren, to your question, because of precession, yes, the Alcor was walking ahead of Vasishtha or the Mizar during 10,000 and 5,000 BC. But interestingly, if you go through that cycle of the precession, like the approximately 26,000 year cycle, if you, let's say, go back, like say 10,000 BC plus 26,000 years in the past, you will not see Alcor walk ahead of Mizar because of these proper motions. So what I'm saying is, as far as the past is concerned, say last 1 million years, and that would be sufficient for our discussion, it is only this one small interval of 5,000 years, from
Wow.
10,000 to 5,000 BC, when Arundhati could be seen walking ahead of Vasishtha. Now, to your point, if you go, say, 12,000 years from today in future, yes, you will see Arundhati walk ahead of Vasishtha again,
Wow,
but not
that's
in the
interesting.
past.
Wow. So how did you come to the dating, the actual dating of the Mahabharat, and how different is that from what they tell us in school?
Good. Okay. So this one is one. So now, Graham, somebody would think, and I actually thought it like this. This is fascinating, but could this be just a coincidence? Okay, and that's always a chance.
Yeah.
So I said, what else? What else? And of course, the Mahabharat text related to the war, which lasted only for 18 days, and then there are some events which went after for a year and a half, and some events before a year. So let's say still a time of maybe not more than 2 years. And related to this 2 year time period, there are close to 300 astronomy observations like this. Okay, some of them not as fascinating as this. And so now imagine solving a jigsaw puzzle or solving like a crossword puzzle. So I took another set of observations. In fact, I wrote a book on this, just on this another set called Bhishma Nirvana. Okay, I'll not go into the details on this, we have to, but the point is, I was trying to answer myself that this Arundhati Vasishtha, it's called now AV observation, is that just a coincidence? So I said, is there another set of observations that I can objectively test using modern astronomy? And that Bhishma Nirvana, that event has close to 100 observations. And they also decisively say something very similar, but even more impressive. Do you know what's the conclusion of that is? They basically, the Bhishma Nirvana evidence, close to 100 astronomy observations brought together, astronomy and chronology. They say that this Mahabharat war can only happen between 5,000 BC and 7,000 BC.
Okay.
So with AV, I started 10 to 5,000. Now Bhishma is bringing me 5 to 7,000. And to answer your question, so now finally, how do I get to a specific year? And out of these 300 that I mentioned, there are about 50 descriptions. Those are specific to the planets. For example, specific to the sun, the moon, the eclipses, their specific positions with respect to the zodiac. Then think of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, their conjunctions, their retrograde motion, their classic, they're crossing the path of the sun in an oblique fashion. So those are like 50 descriptions. And frankly, as a scientific way, we have to just test all 50. But in reality, I don't have to test all 50 to get to the year of the Mahabharat war, like 5561 BCE. Just for example, if I take only 8 observations of planet Mars, there are only 8 observations for Mars. And if I take only those, and if I test using modern astronomy, it will take me to 5561 BCE. And it doesn't matter whether I search only within 5000 and 10,000 BC, or I start searching for them right from today,
It
2024
still
going
takes
back.
you to that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So, and what's the mainstream? What do we learn in school? Or when that date is?
Okay, so the mainstream, well, school, first thing, as I said, the school teaches us that this is not even a history.
Right,
So
right,
that's
right.
number one,
Yeah.
right? So for example, like think of Professor Hopkins from Harvard University, okay, in the last 100 years. So he's not thinking of as a history, but he's like thinking more as to when they might have been composed, like
Yes, right.
written.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So the timing he puts for it, and there is no one timing. He places the timing which is the most recent. He places them around 400 CE. So it's like a 1600 years ago.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the mainstream, I would say they will go maybe 500 years before him. They
Okay.
might say, okay, 200 BC, maybe 500 BC, maybe 1000 BC, but nothing before that, not more than 3000 years from today, as opposed to 7500 years ago when
Right.
actually it happened.
Yeah. So, is there any evidence of a cataclysm at that time? Like, is there? This is a really stupid question, but I just kept thinking, like, these epics. Was it a real? Is there any chance that it was about a cataclysm and the death and destruction of so many men during a cataclysm and not a war? Like, was it an allegory for a huge event?
Yeah. No, it's very interesting you asked that, and I'm glad you asked that question. There is a cataclysm at multiple levels here. In fact, 2 levels at least. One is a physical level,
Yeah.
okay, the geography, geology, oceanography. There is another level that it is happening at the rivers of India, but I will combine this with, say, geography. It's not different. Then it was a cataclysmic event for humanity from a genetics perspective. So let me walk you through, and you can stop me and interrupt me, but let me walk you through the geographical event, like, that goes back to my friend in Atlanta that you referred to. We both are from Atlanta, by the way. I mean, I lived in Atlanta for 20 years, and Randall Carlson also is in
Oh, okay.
Atlanta.
Cool.
Yeah. So Randall and I thought of doing a few podcasts. It's just that he travels so much and I travel so much that we haven't found that magical moment yet, but
Oh,
we'll
okay.
do it
Okay.
soon.
Yeah. That'll be good. I'm looking forward to when you guys can get together.
Yeah. So geological event is this. Not the comet that Randall and Graham Hancock refer to. What other thing they refer to, and not so much related to, well, it is related, not so much directly related to melting of glaciers in North America. Actually, this is a melting of glaciers in Antarctica. This is a 7,500-year-old event. For example, when I was doing my master's at Alberta, there was another student. He's now professor in Mexico. You may consider having him sometime just for that aspect. Dr. Professor Paul Blanchon, Paulblanchon, Blanchon. And he was doing his PhD in geology right at same university. We just did not know each other. We both graduated 1994-95. He with his PhD in geology, me in chemical engineering. And I discovered him about about 20 years after. Okay. So that research is relevant, but you can find the evidence around the world. So let me get back to that event. What Mahabharat says is, so Mahabharat year is 5561 BCE. So it's like, you want to know how long ago? 5561 plus 2024, that's like 7,585 years ago. What Mahabharat says is that one of the character in Mahabharat, Krishna, and I think everyone knows Krishna, if not exactly in the same way he needs to be understood as a historical person. But with the Hare Ramas and Hare Krishnas, everyone knows the word Krishna, of course. So Krishna is one of the very key personality, the key personality you can say as a part of Mahabharata. And Mahabharata tells us that he had a big prosperous city on the west coast of India, in the modern state of Gujarat, the place called Dwarka. Okay, and Graham Hancock has talked a lot about it. When I met Randall in Boulder this past summer, actually we had a long chat on this too, by the way. So this what was a wonderful, prosperous Swiss city, Dwarka or Dwaravati. And Mahabharata tells us that it was destroyed by rising sea waters 36 years after the Mahabharata war. So 5561 BC plus 36 gives you 5525 BCE. And now I was asking, all right, so the Arundhati Vasishta gave me 5561 BC, not just Arundhati, the Bhishma Nirvana, the planetary evidence. Now that number plus 36 gives me the predicted year for the destruction of Krishna's Dwarka by rising sea waters. Now, do I find the evidence for it around the world, or at least on the West Coast? And there is such a tremendous evidence, it's unbelievable. That's the only word.
Wow.
Unbelievable. For example, Graham Hancock and Glenn Milne, who is based out of Toronto, by the way. He's a bathymetric geologist based out of Toronto. They also showed the bathymetric sea level rising, the bathymetric studies on the west coast of India. And they actually show one island just outside the ocean front of state of Gujarat on the west coast of India. And that island disappears. If you have seen their videos and simulations, that island disappears right. Yeah. So if you can pull this down a bit. No, sorry. Forgive me. Go up.
I'm just showing
Further,
them.
yeah. So now you see that, the left side, yeah, there, where your cursor is, that's there exactly you are, right. So that's the area of a Dwarka.
Okay.
And you see that under the ground, like you see, just keep on moving your cursor slowly to the left, left.
Yeah.
Keep on going down, and come down slowly. Yeah, stop. Yeah. There, that area is that island. Now, of course, it's an ocean.
Yeah.
And if you see the simulation done by Graham Hancock and Glenn Milne, that island was still there because water was, as the water kept on going up, it became an island, you can say. But eventually it disappeared right at the time that I am saying, 5525 BCE.
Wow.
So that's a data point from Graham Hancock. But let me give you something phenomenal. This is a papers by Zarins about 25 years ago. And he was studying the entire Arabian Sea. And what he shows for the Arabian Sea is that right in the middle of 6th millennium, which is again 5525 BCE, there was a sudden sea level rise. This is the average sea level rise in the Arabian Sea of 15 meters, 15 meters, right in the middle of 6th millennium BC. And then there was another 8 meters in the next 400, 500 years. So yes. And now, was this a local event?
Is that when Doggerland submerged too?
Absolutely. If you look at the Dogger Bank between Scotland and Norway, absolutely. But let me, since you said that, let me give you a few data points. Okay, actually I have 30, but I'll not bore you with all 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dogger Bank that got flooded. But let me give you the big one. So the one on the west coast, because that's where Dwarka is. So we need to definitely talk. So that's like a sudden 15-meter rise. Not only that, but something more fascinating. There was an additional 8 meters rise in the next 400, 500 years. And when that happened, something fascinating, the mean sea level on the west coast of India was actually 3 meters higher than what it is today.
Wow. Interesting.
And It stayed that way from say 5000 BC all the way to 2000 BC, which is like next 3000 years. And actually, that is a very good evidence to show why some of the places on the west coast of India, now they are inland. A place called Dholavira. I don't know if you have heard that. I mean, Graham Hancock has been to that place too, by the way. A place called Dholavira. Another place is called Lothal. And they were ports for the next 3000 years. So somebody, archaeologists studying these places independently, Dholavira and Lothal, trying to say when they were ports, and their outcome says, oh, somewhere between 4000 and 2000 BCE. And we have the answer. The Dwarka evidence has the answer to that. But Darren, to your point of Dogger Bank, something else. The formation of a Black Sea. Okay, now it is a subject that hundreds of individuals are studying, but the specific study I want to refer is by Columbia geologists, two of them, Ryan and Pittman. Yeah, so the whole Black Sea there. So yeah, keep it that way. Okay, so then I'll show you what happened and how Ryan and Pittman explain it. So imagine now this was a global event. This 5525 BC was a global event. So I mentioned Krishna's Dwarka on the west coast of India. Now we are at the intersection of Europe and Asia, right? Turkey.
Right there. Yeah.
So now imagine when the sea levels went up from the Atlantic, the water entered the Mediterranean Sea. From Mediterranean to Aegean Sea near Greece, from Aegean to Sea of Marmara, very close to that, and from Sea of Marmara with the high increased pressure, the high pressure broke through the Bosphorus channel, which is right at Istanbul, and started pouring the salt water on the other side into a small lake. At that time, the Black Sea was not there. It was a small lake, sweetwater lake, and instantaneously, so to say, I mean, that my instantaneous might have taken 100 years. I don't know what that time is, but instantaneously, so to say, Black Sea was formed as a saltwater sea. And this is a work of Ryan and Pittman, 1998 book, Columbia University. So that was one. And Graham, you would love the story how I came to know of that evidence. Okay, what happened was, I was looking for evidence, and some prisoner from a Tennessee prison wrote to me saying, I mean, he was like blabbering, actually. I couldn't understand what he was saying. He's like writing to me, but as if like he's talking to himself. And he said, everyone is talking of this cataclysmic event, cataclysmic event of 6th millennium BCE. And now this guy, he's referring to me, but he's writing to me. He's saying, now this guy is also talking about 50 BCE. And I wrote back to him, I'm saying, who else is talking besides me? Because I did not know in 2015 anyone else talking of this cataclysmic thing. And then he told me about Ryan and Pittman. So that's one. If you go to Australia, like Great Barrier Reef, you will suddenly see a sudden sea level rise in Great Barrier Reef to the same time, 7,500. And since then, practically flat.
Interesting.
If you go to Caribbean, that is actually the research of Paul Blanchard from University of Alberta. He found 7 different locations, and in all 7 different locations in Caribbean, sudden sea level rise 5600 BCE plus minus 100 years. I mean, I can go on, but there are 30 more points like that.
And you're thinking that it was from an Antarctica melt? It wasn't from, like, what's the physical cause?
Okay, the physical cause, I don't know. And this is not my hypothesis. This is a hypothesis of likes of Paul Blanchard and many other geologists. Because the reason I think they are thinking this is by 7,500 years, like, so which is what, 6 millennium, all the ice from North America is gone. All the ice from Europe is gone. And, so therefore they are thinking it's more because of the Antarctica. Right. And there is enough evidence in support of that, which is to say, you still see the effect as up north as like Black Sea, for example, Dogger Bank. You see this on the west coast of, Netherlands, you see it. You see it on the west coast of France. Of course, you see it in the West Indies. By the way, you see this on the east coast of Maine, the state of Maine,
Yeah, yeah.
not far from Quebec. But the prominent effect is in the south. Like you see this in South Africa, you see this in Argentina, you see this in Australia. On the east coast of India too. Let me tell you this one. This is so fascinating. So while this is happening on the west coast, the east coast of India, where now in 2020, Professor Ramaswamy, he found a very sophisticated evidence of navigation. Now, this is important for antiquity of human civilization, going back to 20,000 years. Okay.
Sea navigation or
Sea navigation, sea
wow.
ocean navigation. Yeah. So the port structures that he found are right now inside the ocean 30 kilometers. Okay.
Wow.
And so last 20,000 years, sea level is rising. So when say about 16,000 BC, so like 18,000 years ago or so somewhere, when the sea level really significantly rose, the first port was gone. And so they built a port inward. So like a port 2. Then that was gone about like 10,000 years ago. And that the port 3 that they built was destroyed in 5525 BCE. There is evidence of that. But this was such a massive event. Not only it destroyed the port, but there was an ingression of a seawater 15 kilometers inside on the east coast of India. And that is the evidence. Very
So
similar to what happened on the
does
west
that
coast.
point to an impact then that it washed in that far?
Say it again, Darren.
Like the 15 kilometers, is that like how far it washed in and receded back?
Yes, that's correct. So right now there is a place called Pumpuhar, which is the port right now, okay, or the oceanfront city. From there, inside 10 to 15 kilometers is a place called Mayuram. So, for example, if you pull the map again and just go to the southern part of India, I can even show you the place. Okay, yeah, very good. That's there. So that sharp corner, yeah, where your cursor is right now, just expand that area. Okay, yeah, and bring it down. Go up slowly, just slowly, you know.
Okay. Oops.
Come on, Graham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up
It
like
will
that.
happen.
Up like that. Yeah.
Well, I'm not seeing it yet. Maybe it's happening on your side.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so go for, yeah, stop there. Okay, now expand if you can.
Okay.
Very nice. Further expansion. And see if you may able to read it. A place called Pumpuhar. POOMPBO.
Yeah, right here. Right here. Yeah.
Where? There.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, if you go from that place straight to the westward on the land, you will place called like a Mailadithurai, like about, imagine going 15 kilometers. Yeah, Mayuram or Mailadithurai. That's, there you
Right
go.
there. Yeah.
So now imagine this, just like on the west coast of India, Dholavira and Lothal, which are now inland, landlocked, they were ports for about 3,000 years, from 5,000 BC to 2000 BC. Exactly the same story for this Mailadithurai or Mayuram, which is right now inside landlocked place. This was a port, a very functional port, and that's what the evidence is of a functional port for about 2,000 to 2,500 years.
Wow.
From 5,000 to what? 3,000 or 2,500 BC.
Okay, before we move on to the Rama and the Younger Dryas and Atlantis and stuff, which is interesting, I do have a question from the chats here. Vera's asking about she's asking about the other texts like Gilgamesh, but I want to get into her other part of the question, which is, does genetic engineering happen in the Mahabharat? So I know you mentioned that it happened physically, like it actually is a phenomena that happened in humanity, but was that also referenced in the text, or did they use the 85% of males dying in the war? Is that symbolism for that? No.
Actually, there are these two different events, and maybe what the the viewer is asking is possibly, was there a test tube baby? Was there a IVF? I don't know if that's what.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Genetic engineering.
Actually,
Not
yeah,
okay.
the Mahabharata is filled with it. I'll just give you a few illustrative examples. For example, the very war is between the two factions of the same family. So the whole family is called actually Kurus, like the Normans or whatever we may want to call it, or the Scots, something like that. They are Kurus, a particular dynasty. And but just for the distinction, because there was a war within the family, the one side is called Kauravas, the sons of a Kurus. The others are also Kuru dynasty, but they are called Pandavas, like because the sons of a king Pandu. Okay, that's why they are called Pandavas. Now their births are mysterious enough. So the five Pandavas, the Mahabharata text tells us, and we have to understand this. Basically, whatever you see, the definition of epics in the Indian, they are called itihasa. Asa in Sanskrit means this is how it happened. But if I may say one line in Sanskrit, if that's okay, and I'll translate it. It says, how is it written? It says, it also explains why it is written, but let's not go today into why it was written, but how it is written. It says, Purva Vrittam Kathayuktam Itihasam Prachakshate. This thing is called Itihasa. This is how it happened, literally, where you take a historical event, an actual historical event, Purva Vrittam, something that happened in the past, but you narrate it. It is composed in a poetry form, in a katha, in a interesting way, in a way that is entertaining, but in a way that is also educational, in a way that is informational, in a way that engages your interest, like say a World War II movie. So there may be embellishments, not maybe, there are embellishments. Because of that, sometimes the descriptions are such that we don't know exactly what they meant by that in a way of technology. But I'll tell you the Mahabharata narration. The mother of the five Pandus or five Pandavas, her name is Kunti, and she has been given a blessing by one great sage that she can invoke a certain deity, and using that mantra, she can use that mantra and she can get a baby. Okay, so that's how the description comes. So so in fact, when she's not even married, what she does, the Kunti, she says, let me see if this thing works.
It's like it's like immaculate conception.
Immaculate conception, right? So she tries one to sun. So there are like these five deities associated with it, like a sun, like as in a sun, Surya, or Indra, another god from Indian system. But she calls on Surya, and we have to take the description. So the sun comes, the sun as in sun, sun comes. Now whatever that means. And she's frightened. She said, oh, I just wanted to try this. I just wanted to test it if this happens. Now he says, you can relate to that. He says, now, sorry, you invited me. Now we have to do it, so to say. So now she has no option. So she ended up conceiving a son. Now the pregnancy goes through 9 months. So that is a normal one, but the conception is not given. So what you said, immaculate conception, is a good one to describe it. And that particular son that is born to her is the sixth Pandava, who fights from the other side, by the way. And that's a long story. But my point is, similarly, she tries 2 more times, other 2 deities. She gives birth to 2 other sons. That's the Bhima and Arjuna, again, big characters. Then she has her husband has another wife, Madri. So she gives the remaining 2 mantras to her and says, you practice those. And then she gives birth to 2 boys. My point is, that's that. Let's take another story to answer the viewer's question. The 100 Kauravas on the other side, these are 100 brothers born to this blind king that I referred to, just now. The way the story goes, his wife, Gandhari, she was from Afghanistan, the Kandahar. Kandahar is originally Gandhar, by the way, Kandahar is Gandhar, became Kandahar. So she's from that area, and she's pregnant, but for some reason she's not giving birth to the child. So this Vyasa, he's a all performance. The person, he's a great composer, he's also a great astronomer, great writer, great poet, but also must be a great medical professional man, because he helps her. He takes the what you call the garbha, that is the Sanskrit word, like the fetus, and he divides that fetus, that's what Mahabharat says, into 100 different pieces, and grows them in 100 different vessels, and
Wow.
out of that 100 sons are born. That is the story.
Wow. There you go. Very, very genetic engineering ish.
Correct, correct.
Well, I mean, I'd like to sort of move on to because this is so fascinating. But the Rama, because I think you talk about it being like another 7,000 years later was the
Correct.
Rama, and
Yeah.
That seems to coincide with the Younger Dryas and like all the Plato's stuff on Atlantis, right? So it seems like there's another twist or another take on that ancient civilization that's pre-Younger Dryas that is from India.
That is correct. In fact, the time wise, the Younger Dryas, including Plato's Atlantis, is nicely sandwiched between Ramayan and Mahabharat.
Right. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. So think of this. Ramayan is Mahabharat we just discussed, which is 7,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Plato's Atlantis, Plato said, or he writes based on based on his narrations with whoever he heard from, that Atlantis went underwater 9,000 years before him. So that's 9,500 BCE, which is 11,500 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
7,500 years ago is Mahabharat. 11,500 years ago is the Plato's Atlantis, and 14,000 years ago, 12,209 BC is Ramayana. Okay. And I'll tell you, all these three events are associated also with the cataclysmic sea level rise.
Right.
And that is captured by Paul Blanchard's one paper, 1995. In fact, I'll send you that paper afterwards.
Okay.
After
Yeah.
our
For sure. Yeah. That'd be great.
yeah, so there was a sudden sea level rise 14,200 years ago, just after Ramayan. There was a sudden sea level rise. The first one I just mentioned, it's called CRE1, Catastrophic Rise Event 1. That's 14,200 years ago. The second one is 11,500 years ago. That's Plato's Atlantis. Okay, that is CRE2, Catastrophic Rise Event 2. And the third one in the Paul Blanchard and James Shaw paper, 1995 paper, is that Krishna's Dwarka, 5,600 BCE plus minus 100 years, CRE3.
So the first two of those would be meltwater pulse 1A and 1B. Is that correct?
Close to it. The meltwater pulse B or A sometime, they give a slightly different timing. Like you will see 8,200 BCE, for example, meltwater pulse, and not 11,500 or not 9,500. So there is a delta of about 1,000 year difference. Difference between Paul Blanchard's paper and what they would consider meltwater. I can even explain why that happens. What happens is when you are collecting the data, the nature of the data is such, or it may vary. Sometime, it's just a good example would be this, and you see if that helps. Suppose there is going to rain. Okay, before it rains, there are going to be clouds, and the humidity in the air will be different, and so on. So suppose we are measuring the humidity in the air or moisture, stuff like that, or the temperature, fall in temperature. That is a one type of data. Then actually when the rain is falling, somebody will actually collect the water. That itself is another type of data. And then because of a rain, after the fact, there are floods, and that will create some other geological data. And the point is, depending on which data you are collecting, whether you are collecting the data before the event just like a clouds forming and moisture, or you are collecting the data when exactly the event is happening, the rain itself, or you are collecting the data when it is causing a flood damage, and that flood, depending on that, your timing may be slightly different. Okay, it's something like that happens here also in the geological data.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Darren, do you have any questions about going back that far?
Well, yeah, I think you just answered my follow-up question. Now that I really think about it, I think you kind of answered it in that thing. So, and now I'm kind of lining up that 5 or 6,000 years ago with I've heard a lot of people talk about an impact sort of in between India and in between Africa and Australia and India and there that caused those drumlins on the northwest coast of Africa, on the west coast of Africa. Is that
Okay, no, that's a good question. That is the Merkel crater. You would have heard that. You know, the supposedly hypothesized by Russian scientists, Merkel crater. You know, that is very close to Madagascar. You know, the east coast of Africa. But yeah, if you pull the map, like, you know, just east coast of the island of Madagascar, and then somewhere there. Here is. Let's see if we can pull it out. Yeah, so just somewhere slightly east of Madagascar and north of Madagascar, you know, that's where now I don't know the exact location, or below that. Yeah, below that, those are Seychelles Islands. Below that somewhere there is this hypothesized what do you call a
Impact site?
asteroid. Yeah,
Yeah. Impact
right?
site? Impact site?
Impact side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you something what I have found, you know, from this. The timing of it is, by the way, is off from all that we discussed today. In fact, the timing proposed by the Russian scientist is about 3000 BC, so like a 5000 years ago. So that's point number one. And they propose that it must have formed many waves and they could be seen. But I will give you, this is not to say I have anything to say about the Merkel crater. Okay, I mean, that's for experts to tell us about it. But I will give you a contrary evidence to that, which is to say the entire ocean front of India, like the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, which is to say Australia, but also places like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, all of those areas, including India, have seen nothing of that sort at 3000 BC. In fact, the evidence is exactly opposite. I'll quote one paper from 2019. This was studied on the western tip of Indonesia, a place called Sumatra and Aceh Banda. Again, Darren, if you can pull the map of Indonesia, just the western side of it, I can show you exact location. So there, yeah. So see where that Sumatra island is ending. Go. Okay, it's blocking. Yeah, go to the left. Sorry, go to west. Yeah, and see that last island of Indonesia. Like you see Malaysia.
Yeah.
Malaysia written. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to the tip towards India. You know, towards all the way to the India.
Yeah.
Yeah. That ultimate tip of Sumatra Island to the top.
Okay.
The north portion. Yeah, we are very close to it. Yeah, and then the Indian area begins. Yeah, there where your cursor is right now.
Okay.
That is place called Aceh Banda. And there they did a beautiful study. What happened is they have the records for ocean dumping organic or sand matter into a cave into the mountains for the last 7,500 years.
Wow, that's interesting.
In fact, Graham, the evidence begins with Krishna's Dwarka. I mean, that time, 5525 BCE. Right.
Yeah.
And since then, you have evidence of every single sea level rise, every single tsunami, all the way to 2004 in that cave. What is interesting is between 3500 BCE to 1500 BCE, which is where the Merkel crater comes into the picture. There is actually evidence from this paper, but also anywhere in that region of no sea level rise or no tsunami whatsoever during that time.
Interesting. Okay, so that maybe we can go a little bit farther up then to, if Darren, if that's okay with you, just
that works.
to like maybe some more correlations between Atlantis and after. So it would be after the, or during as well, during the Mahayana. Like what it seems to me like if your dating is correct, then that kind of fits with an ancient advanced civilization that is pre-Younger Dryas.
Oh, definitely. So Ramayana, I would say simply Ramayana is a pre-Younger Dryas civilization.
Okay.
And so somebody wanting to know what kind of civilizations we as a humanity had, the descriptions of Ramayana is worth reading. As you said, one of your friend is reading Ramayana and he's already on the book number 6, right?
Yeah.
You can ask him to go back to book number 1 and 2 and read the descriptions of Ayodhya, the capital of Ram, or you can ask him to go to book number 4, and read the descriptions of Kishkinda, another city, and of course number 5, and read a beautiful descriptions of Ravana's Lanka, the island city. Okay, so those are wonderful descriptions, but this is not the end. Let me give you one very interesting another historical epoch that takes us back to 34,500 BCE, 36,000 years.
Okay.
Now, if you take away the Mahabharat and Ramayana, then India does not have any other historical text per se. It has a lot of text, but not a text meant exclusively as a history. These are the two epics. But there are these other, the Vedas and the associated text, right? So one text, it refers to one king of the same dynasty as Ram, but long before Ram. Okay, Ikshwaku, the dynasty name is Ikshwaku, the solar dynasty for simplicity. And what that king is describing, or whoever is narrating that incident is describing, he's saying three things. Number one thing he says is that the bright pole star is shifting from its position. So that's observation number one. The second observation, he says, the spring equinox, okay, at that time is occurring on a specific star Regulus. Okay, so spring equinox is happening on star Regulus, which means a sun's position coinciding with the star Regulus. In Indian astronomy, it's called Magha, Magha. And there is a third one, which is again most fascinating. This is from the ground. He says the earth is sinking and oceans are drying up. Okay, earth is sinking and oceans are drying up. Now, if we think of, I'll start with the spring equinox in Regulus. So if we start today, it says, when was the last time spring equinox was on Regulus? Okay, if we go back, the answer is 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
So could this event be from 10,000 years ago? Well, it could be, except there are two problems with it, or at least one big problem. That time, the ocean levels were not going down. The oceans were not drying up. Rather, they were coming up, because oceans are coming up for last 20,000 years. Okay. So what do we do? What Darren suggested is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that 10,000 years ago, 8,000 BC, and go through a complete cycle of this precession of the Earth's axis to 26,000 years plus, which takes us to 34,500. And bingo. Now you have all the three descriptions matching. I can send you the chart afterwards, but if you have talked to Randall, you have already seen this. The ocean levels were going down since 120,000 years ago, all the way to 20,000 years ago. And only in the last 20,000 years ago, the water is coming up. I mean, they had ups and downs like a stock market in between, but the net effect was they were going down for the last 100,000 years before the recent 20,000 years. Yeah. So now if I go back to 34,500 years, I can explain why a bright pole star was moving from its position. That is the Vega. Vega was a pole star in about 38,000 BC, and by 34,000 it has moved, moved from its polar position now away from pole position. The spring equinox is in Regulus at 34,500 BCE. The earth was sinking and oceans were drying up. Okay, ocean levels were going down. And what is meant by earth is sinking?
Yeah,
We don't
that's
know
what
exactly.
it's almost a contradiction in a way.
Well, so that's right. So my and one of my co-researcher, Rupa Bhatti, our interpretation, you may say, is that, at least I'll tell you my interpretation. So when the oceans are going down, one thing is happening is we may also see the landslides, for example, visible landslides, so to say. They are happening even otherwise, but now they are visible. Another thing is, because ocean levels are going down, a land is becoming available at a lower altitudes. And now people, so it's like earth is sinking in the sense, hey, we are going down the earth, so to say.
Oh yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So this is
Okay.
my interpretation for for what it is worth.
Is there any evidence in that about the Cyclopean architecture? Like, is there anything to tie the worldwide civilization of megalithic builders back that far in that text?
Um, uh, well,
Or any
in the
evidence on
text,
how they cut the stones, or how the ancient Indian temples were cut out of the rock? I mean, it's unbelievable, some of those.
true. Yeah, I was there exactly 2 years ago, and we spent 3 days. It's not far from here. Actually, I'm going to go there in like 10 days again.
Oh yeah, oh good.
Yeah,
Cool.
the Kailasha, the Ellora,
Yeah.
I'm going there. But those, at least the way the dating is done right now, those are considered only 2,000 years old. Okay, so not going back to 7,000 or 14,000 or 34,000. But there are other things. I don't want to digress on this. But for example, there is the evidence of dental surgery and dental fillings done in India 7,000 BC. Okay, but that's still not going to take you to 14,000 and 34,000, and not the megaliths that you see beautiful ones in Egypt or Peru and places like that. I would say, Graham, one thing, and this is again my speculation, one challenge with a living civilization such as Indian civilization is this. Like Varanasi or the Kashi is a place, to behold for this reason. I mean, the civilization there, the buildings are coming layer after layer over each other. They are destroying the old building and building new one. Think of it this way: where our knowledge is as good as it can be with respect to the megaliths or even a underground archaeology, whether it's even a river, I would say our knowledge is best for those civilizations which no longer exist, because nobody is there. We can excavate, we can do better study. Now granted, there are new technologies coming up and they will help us. So what I find is, India has these all text. They have these descriptions of great city with rectangular roads and 90-degree angles to each other, like what we see in the Indus Valley civilization, the ancient descriptions like Rama's Ayodhya or Ravana's Lanka. But as a archaeology physical evidence, it's not there. But one of the reason could be those cities still exist. I mean, Ravana's Lanka does not exist, but Ayodhya still exists, Varanasi still exists, and Indraprastha, which was the capital of the Mahabharata kings, is New Delhi, or the old Delhi, I should say. It exists.
So those cities are so old. They go way back. They've been built on up for year after year. What about the Barabar Caves? Have you ever heard of that Barabar Caves?
Where are they, by the way?
Is that what it is? They're in the Barabar Caves. Is that?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah,
Are they in India?
I
Are they
thought
in
they
India?
were. I thought they
Okay.
were, but it's just because that might be something that really is. Yeah, they're in
I'll tell you what I know.
Bihar, India.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I have not been to those. There are other caves I have been to called Bhimbetka. Bhimbetka in the central India, called Madhya Pradesh. I was there 5 years ago, pre-COVID. And there they talk of evidence, certain evidence, human presence going back to million years. Like actually,
Wow.
I saw the marks, and they talk of million years, but I'm not a geologist or anthropologist to say how do they know from the marks that those are million years ago. I honestly don't know that. They have done some pigment analysis of the paintings, just like Altamira paintings at the border of France and
Yeah.
Spain.
Yeah.
They have done similar analysis. Again, I'm trying to look for the report. Nobody is giving it to me. I have a tough time finding it. But they are based on that. They're talking of some of the paintings 10,000 years old or 40,000 years old. But I think it would be wonderful if we can have our hands on that pigment analysis.
What are you working on? What are you working on next? As far as like all this research in ancient India goes.
Okay, so what I'm working on beyond 34,500, and there are enough of the hydrology references, river references, where Yamuna, the river that flows through New Delhi, how it stopped feeding its water to the ancient Saraswati, which no longer exists. So we have evidence of that, but what we don't have right now is a evidence that we can correlate with the text and with physical events like Ramayana or Mahabharat. So I'm working on that, because if you go back 75,000 years, and maybe that's a good point to stop. So that's what I'm working on, sort of fill in the blanks from now. Now we have some blanks filled in, like Mahabharat, younger Dryas, Ramayan, then the 34,500 BC event I told you, and there are a few others. But going back to 75,000 years, and there is a specific reason for that. That is the Toba explosion.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened? The Toba explosion basically destroyed the current India and the broader India. What is interesting is when people actually do the archaeological digs, and when they find that ash layer which matches with 72,000 BC, what they have found is there are stone tools below that ash layer, and there are stone tools after that ash layer. Okay, so there were people before, there were people after. That stone tool culture matches with the descriptions in Rigveda, which is the oldest text of Indian civilization. So I have to connect those dots, and I'm doing that with my co-researcher. So that's what I'm working on.
That's fantastic. That's excellent.
So before we let you go, I do got to throw a curveball at you. So the fact that we've been able to observe these same sort of constellations and stars for so long, because like you had asked that question at the beginning of the show. I'm not sure if we answered or not, but I'm like you. I tend to take all that stuff sort of more literally than as myth. And so you look at all that stuff, isn't it hard to, and we do have the wobble back and forth from Vega to Polaris and that sort of thing, but isn't it hard to imagine that it's all flying through space at 90,000 miles an hour and still maintaining this structure and this balance? Like, is it everything's going in the exact same direction at the exact same speed so that these zodiacs can stay in place over tens of thousands of years?
Yeah.
And now the reason I'm not a flat earther, but the reason I bring it up is because if I fall more and more into bed with this Tychos model, which is the old Tychos Brahe model from way back in the day, that Simon Shack is kind of reinvigorating now. So I'm just, before we let you go, I wouldn't mind getting your take on that, because you're kind of looking at this, and it's just, the more I look at this stuff, the weirder it seems that we can be going at 90 times the speed of sound and all this stuff still lining out.
Yeah. Well, you ask a brilliant question or a comment, I would say. Let me end on that one. And this is, if our viewers understand it, they should get goosebumps. Okay, what you just asked. For example, I'm going to rephrase the question in a slightly different way for astronomy. Because skeptics do ask this question. They say, well, so you are using modern astronomy, NASA data, JPL data, whatever, Indian astronomy, old data, astronomy simulations, mathematical calculations. Based on that, we are going back 7,500 years ago, or 14,000 years ago. Younger Dryas, like 11,000 years ago, or this other thing I told you, 34,000 years ago. How can we trust it? I mean, the masses or their velocities, because that's all matters, like the planetary positions and so on, the sun's speed, or sun into the solar system, or the Milky Way. Here is very interesting thing I want to plot. I want to tell, and we are lucky there. Just a coincidence. See, the astronomy evidence that you see. I'll limit to Mahabharat and Ramayan. The astronomy evidence, Mahabharat has 300 of them descriptions. Ramayan has 600 of them, and they are a combination of certain phenomenon due to the precession, and the others are due to the planetary motions. So the planetary motions is a near Earth phenomenon, like everything happening just within the solar system. And the precession is beyond the solar system, okay? Because it's like really, the Earth's, where it is pointing to. There is one more thing. The planetary speeds are their own, into their own worlds. They are affected by each other a little bit, but they are their own worlds, but has nothing to do with the precession. So it's like a two different astronomy phenomenon we are bringing together into the available evidence we have in Mahabharat and Ramayana. And now the punchline. So what happens is, we use modern astronomy to predict the timing of Mahabharat or Ramayana, but there is something really fascinating happening here. If we want to say test the reliability of modern astronomy to study antiquity, Mahabharat the evidence and Ramayana evidence provide as a golden calibration standards, because they have the evidence which comes from two independent sources, both astronomy, but one from the precession, another from the planetary. So long-term phenomenon and a short-term phenomenon. And guess what? So we use that to predict them, but the evidence is so powerful there that we actually, it gives us a confidence about the modern astronomy that yes, we can use it to go back to study antiquity if such a evidence exists.
And that's based on, it's pretty much the mainstream astronomical observations.
Yeah, because see, so the way the astronomy observations are there in the Mahabharat and Ramayana, they are both a combination of a short-term observation.
Yeah,
so it's like saying, see, we are like saying, okay, that day was Sunday.
So and it matches like our current sort of view of like the sun with the planets moving around the sun and the moon around Earth and
yeah, so that's how the evidence comes. But I'm saying that matches with the descriptions of these epics. So astronomy descriptions match, but it doesn't stop there, because we also have evidence from the terra, from the ground, that also matches with the exactly same years.
Okay.
So our confidence is very high. That's what I would say as we explore.
Excellent. Well, thanks.
Yeah, this has
been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been fun. Yeah, we'd like to do it again sometime if we can with you.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe before we go to the Azores or something with Randall. That's in November.
Right. And what we may do is like what I did with some of the podcasters here in India is I will send you the data files before in advance. That's something Darren can actually pull, that particular thing.
Yeah, that'd be
like
great.
Like these 3 catastrophic rise event, seeing is believing, the picture is worth 1,000 words. Like whoever would have seen it, they say, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. Yeah.
So let's do that. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Nilesh. This has been great. Where can our listeners track you down if they want to follow you on social media or your web pages? Where can any books, anything like that?
And when's your next book coming out? Yeah.
Okay. So for tracking me down, I would say nileshoak.com. That's the best place to do. And my next book, in fact, Ram, my book number 4 came out on 8th December.
Oh, okay.
And now it is in my mother tongue, which is Marathi. Like English is my third language, so Marathi. It will be translated in Hindi and also in English. So that may happen in the near future. Another book that is slated for June. This is another subject. I'll just mention it. You might have seen my video. Sugriva's Atlas. This is related to Ramayana, where this Vanara king describes the geography of the earth all the way from South America to Europe and from Siberia to Antarctica. So a book coming on that, so that's
Wow, that's fast. That's a great one, because that kind of also lends that corroboration to the seafaring ancient civilization, that they knew the whole globe back then.
Yeah. Yes.
Excellent. All
Thank
right,
you
we'll
so
put
much.
links. Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes to all that, and then maybe when that book comes out, we'll have you back on.
All right, very good.
Okay.
You
Thanks,
have a great
Nilesh.
night.
Okay,
Good night.
take care.
Ciao. And that was a chat with Nilesh Oak. What'd you think?
Wow, I mean, I was going to ask him about Dave Matheson, because Dave talks about Arjuna and the Mahabharat all the time, right? With his stars of, I mean, he's got whole probably books or chapters of books on those two epics and his star systems, right?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that my question got answered, but
no, I don't think he caught your I don't think he knew what you're talking about the new Tychos model.
no, I would agree with that.
I think if you would have said it was like, Earth and Mars in a binary system, he would have been like a little shocked, probably. I think that's like you said, is a curveball.
That's a curveball. It's good to throw in at the end, so you don't spend the whole time, going through it. But
what's the other type of pitch? Not the curveball, but the other one that messes people up.
Change up.
Yeah, maybe it's a change up.
Big thanks to Nilesh for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys listening. Blah, 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 blah. First day with the new tongue. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks. It's been a long year. 2025 looking good. Even bigger thanks if you're one of our supporters, our nobles. Like we say, we're trying to really pull up this year and make this the full-time gig and the only one we got to worry about. So head over to gramerica.ca/support today. Sign up for monthly or make a one-time donation if you're getting a little value from the podcast here. Check out gramericacbd.com for all your THC and CBD gummy, CBD mostly gummy and drop needs, elixirs. What do they call them? Look, there's a name for it. It escapes.
Tincture.
Tincture.
I like elixir though. Potions, elixir. I mean, we could have named them potions or elixirs. More like
there might be some legal trouble.
What?
Maybe legal trouble there. So gramericacbd.com for that. Adultbrain.ca for all the audiobooks and everything else. Contact at the cabin for that Atlantis trip we were talking about, as well as all the others. And Gramerica Outlawed for the other podcasts. I'll leave it at that. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week, next year.